She shattered my world, and in retaliation, I meticulously dismantled hers. The entire saga began roughly a decade ago when I was joyfully engaged to a woman I had known for nearly 9 years. Although our relationship had only blossomed into a romantic one for about a year, everything seemed perfect. Let's refer to her as Nancy McEfee and Dunbag. Nancy had always dreamed of her engagement ring, and she proudly wore the one she had chosen. We shared a comfortable home, each of us holding down steady jobs, and our wedding plans were unfolding smoothly. Just 2 months before our big day, we received the exhilarating news that we were expecting a baby. The happiness we felt was indescribable, filling our lives with even more anticipation and joy. As the wedding day approached, now only 28 days away, everything was falling into place. One evening, I returned home from work only to discover that Nancy was not there. Concerned, I called her to check if she had been delayed at work and to find out what time she might be arriving home. To my surprise, Nancy wasn't at her job. Instead, she was at her grandmother's house in another state. In a calm and composed manner, Nancy informed me that she no longer wished to go through with the marriage and that she wasn't coming back home. I was completely blindsided by this sudden and unexpected turn of events. In a state of disbelief, I attempted to reach her again, but her phone was turned off. Desperate for answers, I contacted her grandmother, but received no response. Questions raced through my mind. What about our wedding? What about our unborn child? Where was Nancy? For 3 agonizing days, I was left in the dark, struggling to breathe under the weight of uncertainty and unanswered questions. On the 4th day, Nancy finally reappeared, silently packing her belongings. She refused to speak to me, leaving without a word and sending an email stating that she could no longer be with me, offering no explanation whatsoever. Seeking clarity, I reached out to her sister, hoping for some insight into Nancy's sudden disappearance. Her sister admitted to having no idea what had transpired but provided me with their mother's phone number. This was puzzling because Nancy had previously mentioned that her mother was out of the picture due to her struggles with substance abuse. Nonetheless, I decided to call her mother, only to discover that Nancy had effectively severed all ties between her and her mother. It became clear that Nancy was manipulating the situation to exploit men for financial gain and resources. She had a history of being pregnant twice before, both ending in miscarriages, and had been leveraging relationships to secure what she needed. Eventually, she fled to her ultra-religious grandmother's house, claiming abuse, so that her grandmother would shelter her until she could resume her deceptive behavior. As weeks passed with no communication from Nancy, the impact on my life was profound. I had lost 20 pounds and was reprimanded at work for a noticeable decline in my performance. My family was furious, having lost money on travel arrangements for our wedding, and I was devastated by the loss of all the deposits for our cancelled wedding, which had occurred just under a month before the scheduled date. Financial strain mounted as I discovered our joint bank account was overdrawn by $2,000, leaving me unable to cover the mortgage. Determined to regain control, my overwhelming sadness transformed into a burning rage. The anger within me was so intense that I had to rein it in to avoid severe consequences. About a month and a half after the breakup, I received a devastating text from Nancy. I had a miscarriage. You stressed me out too much, and my daughter is dead now. The message stated that she was blaming me for the loss of our unborn child. In that moment, I decided I could no longer tolerate her actions. My feelings of hatred escalated, leading me to engage in a few days of heavy drinking to numb the sorrow, but soon, my anger surged once more, fueling my desire for retribution. Most of Nancy's belongings were still at my house, possessions I could no longer afford to keep. I began packing them up with the intention of disposing of them, but during this process, I came across several personal items, including her resume and her checkbook connected to her personal bank account. Upon reviewing her resume, it became clear that it was filled with falsehoods, mirroring the deceit she had displayed in other areas of her life. Fueled by a sense of vindication, I created a new Yahoo email account and drafted a comprehensive letter to her employer, meticulously detailing how every aspect of her resume was fabricated. Satisfied with this act of defiance, I moved on to her checkbook. I signed her name on every check and tore them out violently, symbolizing the end of her financial manipulation. To ensure the checks were rendered unusable, I drove 30 minutes to the most rundown area of town and discarded them on a sidewalk near an AM/PM convenience store. Returning home, I disposed of all her belongings except for her laptop, which I retained for further actions. 2 weeks later, Nancy reached out to me. I chose not to answer her calls, but her voicemail message claimed she had been laid off due to company cutbacks, something I knew wasn't true. Another couple of weeks passed, and I started receiving letters from a district attorney's office regarding bad check restitution programs, a direct consequence of her irresponsible financial behavior. Additionally, I received a notification about the renewal of her car registration, prompting me to shred those documents as well. In an effort to cut her off completely, I submitted a change of address request for her at the post office, directing her mail to a temporary homeless shelter, which seemed fitting given the circumstances. Through a mutual acquaintance, I learned that Nancy, now unemployed, was staying with friends and still receiving financial support from her ultra-religious grandmother. Taking advantage of this information, I accessed her laptop and created another Yahoo email account, differing only by one number from her actual address. I then sent an email to her grandmother containing a video I had saved of Nancy engaging in inappropriate behavior, titling the message, "Hey Grandma, check out this video I took of my job. I hope I uploaded it right." The grandmother responded with a disgusted message, condemning my actions and severing any potential support. Weeks continued to pass, and I received an unexpected call from Rent-A-Center demanding the return of Nancy's furniture. Unaware that it was a rent-to-own arrangement, I informed them that I did not possess the items. They persisted, claiming that Nancy had given them up, but I maintained my stance, asserting that I had no knowledge of their whereabouts. Frustrated and determined, that very night, I set fire to all of Nancy's remaining possessions in my yard, amassing $4,200 in owed debt. Shortly after, I discovered that Nancy had secured a new job. As I contemplated my next steps, I received the thrilling news that Nancy had been arrested for embezzlement. Apparently, she had financial troubles and had stolen $5,000 from petty cash, leading to her arrest. This seemed like a perfect piece of revenge. However, months slipped by with no further updates until a friend informed me that Nancy had been bailed out of jail by her grandmother after only a few days. She ended up accepting a plea bargain, resulting in a felony conviction, 3 years of probation, and required restitution. With this, I felt a sense of closure and decided to let go, believing I had achieved my revenge. A few months later, the phone rang again. It was a repo company seeking information on Nancy's whereabouts to repossess her car. Seeing this as another opportunity to finalize things, I made a few calls and located her current residence. I provided the repo company with her address, and they informed me that I was eligible for a $100 reward if they successfully reclaimed the vehicle. Uninterested in the money, I declined, content with knowing that I had effectively put the final nail in the coffin of her troubled life. Nancy was now a felon, unemployed, and a single mother to a child she had recently had with an unknown man. She was living in an apartment with her brother and his girlfriend, while I had moved forward with my life, happily married, blessed with a beautiful daughter, and enjoying a fulfilling existence. Just yesterday, I received a Facebook message from Nancy, congratulating me on my marriage and the birth of my daughter, expressing her happiness for me. My response was swift and unapologetic, "Go, expletive, yourself." She promptly blocked me, cutting off any remaining ties. Reflecting on everything, I realized that sometimes choosing the difficult path ultimately brings peace and heals the soul.